Hey everyone, how's it going? So what am I working on now? Well, I got a 2015 Honda Odyssey minivan, V6. What is it, a 3.5, 3.7, 3.5? 3.5. Looking at my little computer there. Anyway, so the customer's complaint is check engine light comes on. And usually it's after a cold start. So on a cold start, I watched it twice now. We've had the car sitting here for a couple days. And it'll misfire slightly. Like you don't really pick it up, but the computer picks it up. Like you don't feel it in the car, but the computer picks it up. Slight misfire. And it's pretty much on all cylinders. Sometimes you'll get like 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes you'll get 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes you'll get 1, 3, 5. You know, it's kind of all over the board. But then it goes away. As it's warming up, it goes away. It's not really severe, like I said. So what causes stuff like that? Usually, it's valve adjustment on these motors. This thing has 125,000 miles on it, I believe. So, or no, I'm sorry, 165,000 on it. So, anyway, what we're going to do is the customer does want to adjust the valve, so that's what we're going to do. And let me show you what's involved. I haven't taken anything apart yet, except Honda Odyssey minivan. Obviously, you've got to get the valve covers off, and as you can see, they're blocked by the intake manifold. So, first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the intake off of this thing, disconnect the battery, a couple of things like that. I'm not going to walk you through every aspect of this. This is just an upper plate, which should have the intake runner plenum in it, intake runner manifold in it. The flappers should be inside there. I don't recall. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. So, I'm going to start by taking all these 10s off. Like I said, I'm not going to walk you through absolutely everything. I'm going to take a blowgun first, blow everything off of here, and then start disconnecting stuff. And I'll show you each step as I get through it. All right, so with all the bolts out, the electrical connection disconnected here, you're going to take up on this. And here you see the variable runner plate. I actually get a pretty good view of it. How does this actually work? Well, here's your intake runners. Your air comes in through here. And what it does is it helps block off some of the air. It slows down the velocity of the air too. And that helps give you torque. So that's the reason for that. Okay, yeah, just wanted to show you that. So we're going to continue taking the rest of this off. I also loosened up that clamp there because I'm going to probably leave all that stuff connected. Probably, I'm not 100% positive yet. Battery's disconnected, as you can see. But yeah, let's just keep going with this. Now, I wound up taking out all the bolts around the outer perimeter. The 10mm ones, you don't have to. It's the 12mm nuts here and then the larger bolts there. I also unbolt the throttle body and pull it out of the way. Did have to take that snorkel out. I didn't think I had to, but you do. Because you have, the reason I do this is because you have coolant tubes going to the throttle body, and I just rather have it out of the way. So now, the intake should just pick up. Just like that. So, like I said, those outer perimeter 10mm that go in this intake, and even in here, you don't have to take those out. So, I just got to put those back. I didn't break the seal, so I'm not concerned about bolting it back up and it being okay. I'm going to stuff rags down the intake, and we're going to start getting those valve covers off. Now, with the intake out of the way, as you can see, we got to get those coils out. And depending, a lot of times with harnesses like this, I like to have stuff out of the way. And I notice I got 2 connections down here, these connections over here. And then I have one harness that runs up and under, but it comes into this fuse box here. And I believe it's this wire here. I gotta see how easy it is. If it comes off relatively easy, I may take that off. This way I can fold this whole contraption over to the side. Give myself a little more room. Backside I don't know about, but I'm going to just start working on that, see what I wind up doing. I will show you as I get there. A lot of times too, I will pull the dipstick out. Well, you're going to have to anyway, but actually you don't have to, but I like to pull the dipstick out. I don't want to take a chance of breaking it off. So let me just throw it to the side there. But yeah, let me just start doing it. I'm going to take a blowgun too. I got to blow this stuff off. I should put the dipstick back in and then blow it off. I don't want to blow it off, get any residual dirt and debris out of the way, because as you can see, it's pretty dirty. I did blow it off before I started, because there was like mouse nest type stuff up there. half-eaten nuts and stuff like that. So let me get that stuff cleaned off. Let me start getting this apart, and then we'll see where we wind up. And there you go. The harness is out of the way. See, I told you I could. That harness went here. Basically, this one, I undid the one bolt there, pulled this out of the way. The other harness just came out from underneath it. Just makes my life a little bit easier. So now, as you can see, I've also blown it off, but it's still that a lot of that dirt's just stuck on there. So now I got the 210s here and the 310s up there, and then we're going to get this valve cover off. This upper wiring harness support plate, that can stay in place. You don't have to take that off. So let me get those out of the way, and then we'll get to the valves. I'm going to do one side first, then the other. So now I got everything off of there. So valve cover just pries up. I did pry it up before. A little mungy in there, a little dirty. You got seals here that got to get replaced. The valve cover gasket itself stayed attached to the head. So, all right, so now we have the valves down there. We're going to have to adjust those. So actually, let me get myself organized here, and then we're going to start doing that. Okay, so there is a little window here in the front valve cover, front timing cover, this little flapper here, and I moved it out of the way. Because you have to get the valve, or the cam, onto number 4. Well, since I'm doing this front, it's 4, 5, 6. So right now we're going to adjust 4, and as you see right there, that's number 4 indicated, and you see the line down there. The line lines up with that line at the bottom of the opening right there. Let's see if I can get you in a little better. Well, it's close to it. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's close enough. Close enough for what we got to do. So now we're going to do 4. Now how I'm rotating the motor, I have a 1/2-inch drive ratchet on there going through that opening, and that's a 19 onto the crank. And if you look really close down there, you can actually see the socket coming through right there, and it's turning the crank. Like, I can back up just slightly on the crank, and you should be able to see the belt move. And yeah, actually you see it just brought that back in line. So that tells you what cylinder you can adjust. So 4, which is this one, you should have some play. And you have intake, in which you do have play. And you have exhaust down here. I can move this out of the way now. Which you do have play. So now I got to measure it and see what they actually are at. So here we go. Intake is supposed to be 8 to 9 thousandths. Here's an 8 thousandths feeler gauge. Now I'm able to take the feeler gauge and get it in there with absolutely no issue, which tells me the gap is too big. So now the exhaust, which is down here, same thing, I put an 11 in there. I'd rather go a little bit tighter than looser. And same thing, the angle's a little weird down here, but let me go out a little bit. Same thing, I'm able to get the feeler gauge. I know it's not a good spot for you to actually see it, but the feeler gauge gets in there with absolutely no problem, and it's got slop to it. So we're going to have to adjust that up. You have these jam nuts to the outside, and then you turn the inside. You kind of have to hold it. They make special tools for this, but you can get around that. You can just use a screwdriver and a 10mm box wrench. Do not use an open-end wrench, because you could possibly round out the locking nut. All right, hopefully I could do this in a way that you could see this relatively easy. So I got a box wrench on there. Just going to break it free. Now there are torque specs for these. I'll be honest with you, I normally don't actually go with an actual torque wrench and tighten it down. I kind of gauge how tight it was coming off, and I do the same thing going on. So now what I try to do is I go with the feeler gauge back underneath here, and I feel go to a different position maybe, and I try to feel the actual feeler gauge and feel the drag on it. Then it'll turn nut in, or the adjustment stop in, and try to get it to slide nicely in there. You gotta have some restriction to it, just like that. So now it's got a little bit of restriction. You hold the center of the nut, or the center of the adjuster, and then you tighten down, being mindful that you don't want that center adjuster to move. So now you should have still some play in there, and you should still be able to get this in, but it should be a little on the tight side. And trying to do this with a camera is sometimes difficult. And of course now I can't get it in there. Yeah, there it goes. See? So now it goes in. But it's nice and snug. You got a nice little bit of drag on there. Make sure you have oil on the tip of your feeler gauge. So now I got to do the other side, and then I got to do the exhaust. Okay, so I just cracked the jam nut free on this one, and hopefully we can see this. This one is actually quite a bit out of adjustment. So there's like a sweet spot in there where you'll feel your feeler gauge slide in and out. Some people use a little bit of grease. I use oil, it's fine. Either way you do it, it's fine. It's not gonna hurt nothing. Make sure that lock nut is down. And like I said, they sell an actual special tool to do this. Makes your life a lot easier. I don't have it because I do maybe one valve adjustment every 2 years. And I'm not going to spend the money on a tool for that. All right, so that one's good. So now we're going to move on to the exhaust. Obviously, the exhaust being where it's located down there is a little difficult for me to show you. So basically, I'm not going to show you because there's no way I can film it and show you. So if you notice, these are different. Oops. You back up. If you notice, these are different rocker arms, different design. These are the VVT style rocker arms. These are not. These are just standard. There's no change in the actual valve lash. It all stays the same, but the torque on the jam nut changes because of the design. There again, feel it when you're cracking them free and just tighten it up accordingly. That's what I've always done, never had an issue. You can torque it if you want to. There is a torque spec, torque spec for everything. All right, let me go ahead and let me do the exhaust on that one, and then we're going to go on to 5 and then to 6. I can tell you this, the exhaust was way out, especially this one so far. Of course, it's like difficult to show you and film at the same time, but like I said, I got good drag on there now. Of course, I can't get it in there to show you again. I just got it in and out there. Trying to film and do this at the same time is sometimes a little difficult, especially on something like this, but I literally just had this thing go in and out with no issue. There it goes. Sometimes it's the angle that messes with you. So, all right, on to the next ones. Like I said, now I got to rotate the motor and get it to 5, and then I can do 5. Okay, just rotated the motor, so now that should be on 5. Or is that 2? No, it's 2. Okay. I got to keep rotating until I get to 5. See, being on 2, yeah, these are tight. So you know that's incorrect. But I'm looking with a mirror, so sometimes you'll go to mirror. 2 kind of looks like a 5. Okay, I just rotated it to the next thing. I can see from the side when I'm doing it, I can see like the next notch line up, but I can't see what the number is. So let's see. Yeah, so that's 5. So now I can adjust this one. Yeah, wow, that's got a lot of slop to it. All right, basically same thing. Let me just adjust everything. I'm not going to show you adjusting them. It's the same exact procedure that I just showed you. So I'm going to go through this one, then the next one, and we're going to go from there. So 5 is all adjusted. I just rotated it over. Hopefully I lined it up. Like I said, I could see from the side, I could see the line, but I can't see the number. So, yeah, so now I'm on 6. So now I can adjust these. Wow, that feels really loose. Yeah, they feel really loose. Okay, let me get those adjusted, and then we're going to put this valve cover back on, and we're going to go to the back side. All right, so now we got to change these spark plug tube seals. If you got it apart, get them, may as well replace them. Unless you just replaced them not too long ago. You got to drive them through from the other side. What I will usually do is use a screwdriver. Actually, don't use a screwdriver because these are not chisels or punches or anything like that. Oops. Let me back you up a little bit. See a slightly better view. Can you see that? Yeah, you might not see the whole thing there. Back you up a little bit more, just so you can get a better angle. And I usually try to catch the edge of the seal if I can. Sometimes they don't come out right away, as you can see here. These are not wanting to come out very easy. Yeah, they're going to fight me going that way, so I'll just try it this way. No matter how you slice it, it comes up peanuts. It doesn't want to come out. There it goes. And it popped out. Sometimes you'll get them where they fight you, like this one. Junk caught up in here. Doesn't matter all that much, but you want to try to make sure that the opening that the seal sits in, you want to make sure the opening is relatively clean. I'm going to clean this one up with a little bit of sandpaper or something, only because it's got like a buildup of junk on it. So not a big deal. The other thing I wanted to show you is this. Make sure while you're doing this, in the corners here, see that? That's silicone. That's factory silicone. Don't drop it in the motor. But you want to pick it up and out like that and carefully discard somewhere. But this side's going to have a little bit down there, a little bit up there. You can see it. I think they call it Honda Bond. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I usually try to pick it off. Get in there with a screwdriver, just dig it out. Anyway, this way you get it nice and clean. You're going to put a little silicone there, then the whole cover is going to go on. So let me get these seal receiving holes cleaned up, and then we'll put the new seals in. Okay, so we're ready to install the new seals. I want to show you something. See this? I've seen this happen many times, and people will replace the entire valve cover for this. It's not necessary. As long as the edges where the seal sits is fine, then don't worry about this. This pitting here, it happens sometimes, I don't know why, but your sealing is actually here around this. This is your new seal. So this upper part here is really nothing. It's just an open gapped area. So your seal is basically this. Follow? So no reason to actually worry about the rest of that. So we're going to install these. Let's see. See what I'm looking at here. 9 times out of 10 you can push them in with your fingers if you've got strong enough fingers. Sometimes you can't. These are a little bit on the tight side. It's just like installing any other kind of seal. You want to get them so they're flush. And they are. That was a little better than this one. That's how that one's going to sit, I guess. It's just up a hair, but it's not going to affect anything. There's no pressure behind this. It's just to keep splash from coming up. So from here, you're just going to install your new gasket. Now, I already did clean the valve cover. So this got a locating notch right there on the gasket itself. And over here on the gasket itself. So basically you just get it sitting down in place like that. Make sure everything's happy, which it is. Sometimes you got to go around it several times and make sure it seats down. As long as you clean out the oil that gets caught up in that gully, usually you can get the gasket to seat neatly. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I got to clean up the head before I put this on, and there's something else I want to do. Hang on, what was it? Now the next step in the equation are these things. How do you get these things off of there, and how do you install the new ones? I'll show you. It's actually pretty simple. Find a socket that you know is going to fit over the bolt, like the bolt is going to be able to be received inside the socket. So if you have something with like a shoulder in there, you don't want to use that. But it's going to be pretty simple. Just take it like this, stick it down on something you can hit with a hammer, and there, you pop the old one off. Okay, now, how do you get the new one on? Very simple. I prefer transmission assembly lube. This stuff, assembly goo, it's got a label on it. I'm not going to take that off. Can you even read the top? Yeah, here it is. This stuff. I've had this stuff for years, what I've always used. I always put a little bit on the bolt, on the receiving end, and then on the seal washer here, I put a little more, like this. Then you can actually put it like this. You could take the socket and a hammer, or you could do this. This is my preferred method. You take your socket, you put it in on this side, stick it into your vise, like such. and simply, boop, pop it on. That's it, you're done. So I'm going to do all the rest of these, and we're going to put this valve cover on. The one other thing I meant to show you, if you have like a super long bolt like this, where it's kind of difficult to get the socket to fit over it, or even unless you had a piece of pipe or whatever, what you could do is you just separate the chrome piece and then cut the plastic. I'm trying to do this while showing you on my video, and I'll probably cut myself in the process. But you get the idea. Do that to separate it, and then take it apart. Obviously, going back together is much easier because you're just going over the short end, and it does work the way I showed you. Okay, so now I got a little bit of silicone in the corners there. I wiped that all down. Now we can lay the valve cover in place. Be gentle where the tubes come through the valve cover for the spark plug seals. Sometimes, like this one, is not cooperating, so I'm going to probably put a touch of oil on the seal. And you can see some of the silicone came off that I stuck in the corners. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of Trani assembly lube on the spark plug tube seals because they're not happy going onto the tubes themselves. Alright, so I just put a little light hint of Trani assembly gel. This happens every once in a while where the spark plug tube seal doesn't want to go exactly into place, and I don't know what the reasoning is behind that. These kind of don't want to fit over top of the actual tube itself. Like I can see it right there. So what I'm going to probably have to do is get a plastic tool. But if you look, you see how the edge of it is sticking up right on the edge of the tube itself? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a plastic tool inside there and try to roll the edge and get it to push down a little bit. It's not a big deal, but it does happen every once in a while. Okay, all in, all caught, everything's good. Cover's tightened down. You can see the little bit of silicone in the corners, squished nicely. The fact that it picked up some onto the valve cover, there was no reason to clean it down and do it all over again. It was still wet, everything was good. Yeah, so now I'm going to put the harness back in place and we're going to move to the back side. So there we go, the rear valve cover is off. As you see, I have a feeler gauge in on the intakes. I rotated this around, so now that should be on 1. And there you see it's on 1. So you have 1, 2, 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to adjust everything up. I'm not going to show you everything because it's just a pain in the neck. I'm going to be, what you're going to see is my gigantic back the whole time trying to get myself in there to do this job. So I'm going to get it adjusted. This one seems a bit loose also. The number 6 on this side was extremely loose, which surprised me quite a bit. But anyway, so let me go ahead and let me get these adjusted up, and then we're going to put this all back together. That's factory Honda Bond there. That silicone there is from the factory. That's a lot. I'm actually kind of impressed with how much is there. Don't know why they would have used that much on there, but they did. That rear valve cover, let me tell you, they're not fun to get off on these things. You got to snake them up, pull the harness all the way over and down, and then snake it up and through. It's not fun. So it's actually 3 days later. I got a phone call. I have to come off of this. Mrs. Wrenching and my grandson Aiden, who lives with us, both came down with pneumonia. Aiden got it much worse, and they had it for a few days prior. They were homesick, but Aiden was really not doing so well, so we wound up at the hospital. And everything's going good now. So I'm back at the shop, and yeah, so now I got to finish up. I got to adjust the valves on this. And like I left off, I was talking about the valve cover. I actually had to watch the last video clip to figure out where I left off. I did adjust 1 and 2 already. I got to go on to 3, and then we're going to put everything back together. So that's where we're at. All right, let me get to it. So everything's together, everything's all ready to go. I pushed it back so I can get in and out of it. I left it in neutral with the battery disconnected. So let's start it up. Push start. Okay. Sounds smooth. Oh, there you go. Sounds good, nice and smooth. I'm happy with that. All right. Well, hopefully you got something out of that video. If you did, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.